Welcome into another episode of Debate Night. We are back yet again with some fun topics and some great guests. So let's get right into it. We're going to introduce everybody. Brodie Smith is here.
A little late. Apologies.
Yeah, even by my standard, which is notoriously loose.
That's on me. I'm on Wi-Fi too. I'm not even on the actual. I just realized that now. But yeah, last week, man of the people. Interesting. Trevor getting some slander, a little more than normal.
Vote and for with,
what? Just points maybe. Like why is there points if Hunter's always going to win? The bias is out of control. And my question to you is: ESPN just announced that they're canceling part around the horn. Are we nervous?
Well, they ran for like 20 years, so
okay, so you're fine.
Well, here's what I have to say to those commenters: is the points are of course biased. It's me handing them out. I don't have a what do they call it in a rubric. I don't have a grading rubric.
That's fair.
That's why I introduced the Instagram poll. And you want to know something? Hunter has won the Instagram poll. So,
well, here's the thing too. Hats off to you for seeing this. Is you just don't have Hunter on the show this week.
Yeah, I literally.
So he can't.
I literally texted him. I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna give you the break, and also I'm just sick of you winning. So just don't want to credit. Listen, he's been good. He's been on point. And if you disagree with me, I gave you the platform. I'm not a dictator, and you.
That is true.
The Instagram people agreed. So. Listen, take it up with the Instagram poll, because if somebody else wins the Instagram poll, I'll make that known on the following episode. I want there to be credit where credit is due. And until then, I'm going to keep giving out my biased points, I guess. That's what's going to happen. If you guys have not been around long enough to know that I do not have a bias towards Hunter, then you must not watch or listen to anything else we do on this network, because there is zero chance that I would be giving him wins out of the pity of my heart. I'd be giving them to Gary, all of them to Gary. Anyways, Hannah's back on the show after a pretty solid start. People were saying you could be the next great.
Yeah, I was kind of floored to see all the comments. I guess I'm woman of the people now. I truly appreciate all the support though, because yeah, that was very surprising. But yeah, I'm just really excited and grateful to be back, and hopefully I can do halfway as good this time.
Hey, you set the bar high. But hey, at least you got the nice comments. We got Ross joining us again. Ross was here last season, coming back for another round.
Coming back for more pain and more debating. I just hope to be as good as Hannah this year, and hope to avoid the Ross dress for less comments this year.
That's that you just put it right back in his mind. So
never know.
There's no telling. And then Mike is here as well. No plans this year, Mike.
No plan. Well, there will be plans. I'm kind of hiding in the corner of my office. My wife's painting a mural on my back wall. And it's not done, and there's a ladder and some paint, so I figured this would be a little bit nicer. Brodie kind of took my thunder with the Around the Horn. I just think it's kind of interesting that that's been around for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And then Debate Night comes around for like few, and all of a sudden they're gone. I think we maybe pulled some of their audience. So
that's the real talking point. Tony Reale, he's a nobody. Yeah. Anyways, it is funny when you make a show after another show and then said show dies, but it was around for a long time, so it had run its course. Woody Page only has so many things he can write on the chalkboard.
That's true.
All right, well, we're going to get into our topics. We've got some kind of creative prompts tonight because obviously we had a week off in the world of disc golf. Kind of. We had to go throw event. But then next week we'll be back into Waco and into some more current events. So, yeah, we got some interesting topics today, and we're going to start by talking about some of these players who have switched manufacturers this year. So historically, players and fans have used new bags as a crutch for lackluster performance. With the early success of Ezra Robinson and Ricky Wysocki under a new manufacturer, is the idea of switching bags ever justifiable as a reason for poor play? Because we've definitely heard it in the past. Brodie, what do you think?
I think it's decreasing year after year. I mean, I think if you look at a lot of these manufacturers now, they have pretty built out lines. I could see, 10 years ago, going from one manufacturer to the other, there might be gaps. There might be a disc that you truly relied on for your upshots or for your distance driver that might just not have the same. They might not have the same flight characteristics of the new manufacturer, and that is going to take some time to get used to for sure. I think the other thing that we're seeing too is players are putting more time now than ever into their game. Back in the day, when I got on tour, I would hear some players say, "Oh, when the off season comes around, I just don't pick up a disc." And, they wait for a week or so before an event starts for the next season to actually start practicing again. So I think gone are those days from the top pros. Gone are the days of going to outside from maybe there's still maybe a small fraction of companies out there, but most of those companies will allow you to throw other discs. They don't require you to throw every single one of their discs. So at this point in time, if you switch sponsors and you come out lackluster, you come out slow, the fingers are going to be pointing more at yourself and not at the disc. And that's going to be just that.
Yeah, no, definitely. There certainly has been an evolving part of that. Things have evolved, since a decade ago. There's a lot more options out there. Hannah, what do you think? Is there any kind of crutch that players should be able to use?
Yeah, I definitely think having a new bag is a justifiable reason for poor play, but only in certain situations. Depending on the player's circumstances, like where they live or how often they're able to practice in the off season, they may only have a few rounds to practice that it isn't cold or there's not snow on the ground. Top pros, in theory, should be able to win with any manufacturer's discs, but you have to be certain of how those discs fly. In the cases like Ezra Robinson and Ricky Wysocki, they have a combined 33 years of PDGA tournament experience. And even so, Ezra didn't win any of the tournaments that he played in New Zealand. He had plenty of time to figure out his bag before the Spring Plate Open, and the performance he put on was 3 straight rounds of incredible golf. Ricky, on the other hand, won the Shelley Sharp Memorial against a similar level of competition to the Tour Down Under. He's obviously a fast learner with the discs, but you could see in his YouTube videos where when he's trying things out, there was a larger margin of error the more unfamiliar he was with some of the discs flights. When the pressure of the Pro Tour at Olympus was on, they both performed exceptionally well. And the pressure of having a new manufacturer did not get to them. If 2 younger players had been in their shoes, they might not have fared as well. So if the lack of the knowledge of the discs isn't the issue, it could be the pressure of a new deal that could be used as a legitimate excuse. And we know how that pressure has gotten to people in the past.
Yeah, most definitely. And certainly experience is a factor in that, having thrown a lot more discs and been around a little bit longer. Ross, what do you think?
Yeah, so one thing that frustrates me to no end about disc golf from the Pro Tour level down to local C tiers is the amount of excuses that players use to justify poor play. Could be anything from I got the worst kicks, I got bad rollaways to new manufacturers. It really is frustrating to where players seem to be allergic to accept responsibility sometimes for maybe when they just played poorly. It's okay, you can do that. As Brodie said, and it's been repeated that, all of these manufacturers at this point have proven that they have the lineups that could win Pro Tours, National Tours, World Titles, Majors. There's no longer those gaps. And, when James Proctor was sponsored by ThoughtSpace, won MVP Open, he was throwing Calvin Destroyers all over that course. So there really is no excuse at this point. On the flip side, I think that, if anyone is saying, oh, Ezra was able to win because he switched to Discraft from, leaving Prodigy, which has been accused in the past of maybe not having the best plastic. If you watched that event, the thing that clearly changed for Ezra was his mental game and his focus. That man was scary locked in all 3 rounds, and he did not let anything bother him. Slip-ups didn't seem to get to him like they did maybe at Beaver State Fling, where it was clear that he got into his own head. He was just a machine out there. He could have been throwing any plastic. I don't think anybody was beating him this past weekend.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So Ross definitely not convinced that the plastic would have played a huge role. Mike, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make anything an excuse, but if you're good, it's not a great excuse. And we have history to back that up. I mean, Paul, Simon, Gannon, they all switched. Ricky switches every year, it seems like. And they all had basically the same or better results after they switched. And I mean, I would argue that a lot of these players benefit from switching, just kind of getting a new change after the long grind and the monotony. I mean, Kevin Jones switched in the middle of the season, and his next event, he had the best finish he had all year. So I don't know when he was throwing those discs or if he just decided to switch. Who knows? But I think, Paul, back when he changed the Discraft, explained how hard it was for him because he only used a small number of molds. But as time has gone on, all these pros use pretty stable discs. And obviously there's some difference between brands, but when you're trying to find the difference between a nuke and a destroyer and a insert overstable driver from company, they're all pretty much going to be the same in the sense of your comfortability with them if you go out and throw them. I mean, we saw Ezra struggle in the Aussie stuff. He had some discs flip that wouldn't have normally flipped. He had some kind of questionable choices. And then obviously the turnaround time wasn't that long for him to have it work out. So, I mean, even players like Germ, who isn't a top player, he went and won the same tournament back-to-back years with two completely different bags. So I don't think it's a great excuse. I think that this isn't like switching to Prodigy back when everyone went on that team and you were sneakily throwing Firebirds because they only had 4 discs. The times have come where every lineup's pretty good, and if you put the effort in, it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Go ahead.
I have my first rebuttal for Hannah here. So, first thing, I will say this too. There might be something like what Ross was bringing up too. There might be something, not just the plastic, because I think that's what needs to be separated now. Because I think, hopefully, hand up, majority of people watching, listening aren't dumb consumers and understand that majority of manufacturers make the same disc or make good discs. But the big key differences are some of the things they do behind the scenes. And I think that is maybe something that Discraft has helped Ezra with, is maybe made him feel a little bit more confident in having a good contract that maybe Prodigy didn't have, maybe some help in other areas that are relieving that stress. So that, I think, is going to be the separation that we're going to see, the branding, all that. Not so much, hey, we have this disc that no one else does. But Hannah, my question to you is, how long do you think it takes a pro to get confident with a disc that they've never thrown before?
Oh boy. At the top level pros, I would assume, rather they've only been on
people on tour, just people that are playing on tour.
People on tour, I mean, depending on how much they're practicing, maybe a couple of weeks. Like you said, the plastic isn't that different. And I think a lot of it does come.
I'll probably tell you about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Like you take a disc out to the field. If you have a stack of 5, I mean, it's even better if you have a stack of 5 or 10 of them. You throw it a couple times, you know what it is. Now, the thing that was happening with Ezra down at, was it New Zealand?
Yeah.
Wind. That's a tough thing to just like practice in. And so I think that's where he was struggling a lot, is you don't have the practice with the wind. But I take Calvin out and I say, hey, Calvin, throw this disc. He's going to go, oh, this throws just like my T-Bird. And he's going to know exactly how to throw it. And it's, I mean, that's just how it is. Because the big thing with amateurs versus pros is pros aren't going to mess up their throws a lot. AMs, you might throw a different shot and be like, oh my God, what the heck, this disc? And it's like, no, bro, you like just threw a bad shot, where the pros can like dial it in a lot easier. So that's where it's just like, you give someone a new bag, and we've seen it. Was it Eagle and Paul when they did the big switch, or was it Simon and Paul? They did the bag switch or something. Didn't they do a big video? I don't know. They did a big video, and it's like halfway through the video, they knew exactly what their bag did, and they just were sticking with the disc that they knew. So it doesn't take long at all.
Yeah, the landscape has changed. I think if you if you're somebody like Simon, who was with a company for like a decade and then went to a company that has quite a different feel for their plastic, then I think there's maybe like a little room for error. But once again, if you have an entire off season to learn it, I think the only excuse a player can really have is if there actually is a gap in a lineup and they need to make a disc to fill that, which they did for Simon. And we're actually going to talk about that next here with our next topic, which is about disc lines here. So obviously we've seen that trend happen a bit. And I want to know, do you think disc golf manufacturers will eventually regret giving so many players their own line of discs? Will this cause issues when those players move on? And should companies be more focused on moving stock products with their players instead? One of our Grip Block listeners had asked this question. So Hannah, what do you think?
Yeah, so no, I don't think that they'll regret it because to attract the most popular players, you have to be willing to offer what the other manufacturers are willing to offer. If a player is deciding between similar companies offering similar money, but one of them is throwing in their own line of custom discs, the player is obviously wanting to probably go more in that direction versus just taking a paycheck. This forces manufacturers to offer a disc line to players if they want to attract the top talent. Would Simon have gone to MVP without the Simon line? And from a fan or buyer's perspective, having a huge variety to choose from is great. The discs I choose to throw are not the same that my husband throws or our friends throw. So the fact that there are so many options allows us all to find something that works with our own game and overall comfort level, as well as arm speeds and physical capabilities. So sure, at some point, the amount of different disc lines from different players may saturate the market, but that'll only occur if disc golf ever truly stops growing, or if suddenly everyone in the top 25 has their own disc line, because then that might actually be too many discs. When the players move on, the manufacturers will suddenly have a lot of discs that could be looked at as collector's items. Just look at how Discmania handled Simon and Eagle stock when they left. The thing that is so much more difficult to the thing is that it's so much more difficult to create scarcity with stock runs. Having special lines with first run discs or special stamps is a good way to create buzz and demand for a limited product that can attract a higher price point to cover the players and manufacturers cut. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to how each manufacturer wants to handle having to rebrand or reuse those molds.
Yeah, certainly. That's one of the big questions there. Ross, what do you think about these player disc lines?
If I was a manufacturer, I would be very skeptical and very reserved on who I gave a line to. If you could look to like the Paul and the Simon example, those are superstars in the sport. I don't think those are necessarily what we should be talking about. I would look more towards what Prodigy did with Kevin Jones and Kale LaVisca, who both got their own lines. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't see a lot of people throwing reverbs or Falcors out on the course. It seems like maybe that wasn't the wisest investment on Prodigy's part. And by limiting the amount of players who are getting their own line, it only increases the hype around those that do get one. I also think if you were to point to an example like James Conrad at MVP, I don't know what deal they have going on, but they are just giving him very good discs. I mean, the Trail is an incredible disc that I don't think people are throwing because it has James's name on it. I think it's just they're throwing it because it's an incredible disc. If you look at like what Innova does, which I think is the model I would do if I was running a manufacturer, is taking an existing product and tweaking it for the player. You have when the Calvin Destroyer originally came out, there was so much hype around that when really it was just a more overstable destroyer. Or this last year with the Evelina Destroyer, which is now we made a destroyer that's a little more straighter, a little more AM friendly. And even going back farther with like Casey and McPro Plastic, to where you can still generate that hype around a player without having to make this massive investment in that player.
Yeah, that's certainly the more old-fashioned way to do it. That's definitely what Innova has taken on. Mike, which of those models do you think works best?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for us to know if they're going to regret strategies or not without actually seeing the numbers. But it definitely does put them in awkward positions if and when players leave. I mean, Ross mentioned Prodigy. If you go to Prodigy's website, which you can do right now, and you still see 6 discs with Kevin Jones branding on it trying to be sold, like, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, but I will say they didn't put a lot of money into that those discs because it literally is just a rebrand of some Ace Line discs. They're not special discs. I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but it does feel like a cash grab at times. But if one or two, or it does feel like a cash grab. But I think that brands should probably be prioritizing their own identity over player identities in a perfect world for longevity. Having stock discs be like the best possible product with some special runs every once in a while, and having pros market those and make players think, oh, wow, they're using those discs, I should use them too. Even though maybe in the background, they're getting slightly altered ones or ones that are more overstable. But from a fan perspective, it looks like you're throwing what they're throwing. And I think that where disc golf is right now, it just thrives so much on personal connection with the players. I mean, fans still kind of think players are jerks and rude if they don't stop and say hi or take pictures or sign autographs. Like, that disconnect is still there. So it's very possible that pivoting to brand first strategy is kind of too soon right now. It's not ideal unless disc golf grows and that kind of separates. But right now, I think that with something like what Innova does or what Discman used to do with like the cloud breakers and stuff makes the most sense. So you're not left holding a bag where you only were like, hey, throw this because it's this person's disc, and then they leave. You don't really have much to stand on anymore.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the main issues. And yeah, I don't know what the thought process is behind like Prodigy and what they were doing. Like it definitely seems like they were a little more eager to hand those out. Brodie, what are your thoughts on the player only disc lines?
So first thing is, like, when I came in, I thought that was the dumbest idea, that you had to win a world title in order to get a disc. Like, that was like kind of like the across the market, where I just thought that people were like leaving so much money on the table when all you could do was like, maybe you have like a signature, and that was like even like signature disc, like just having like your name on a disc. You'd have to like win a world title. So I think that we're gone now. Like, but now I think what a lot of people have said here, we got to be smart about it, because if you start giving everyone a disc, it definitely does like kind of water it down. Now with Ross, he was giving some really great examples. But Ross, here's the thing. I thought you were going to show up as Dillard's. You're still Ross dressed for less, unfortunately, because you missed two of the biggest examples. You got the Sexton Firebird and the Get Freaky. The fact that some people don't even know that the Get Freaky is just a zone shows that there is a way that you can market a player's disc in a way that it isn't detrimental if the player leaves, right? And that's what I think some of these companies have is, if a player leaves, then they're just left with this stockpile of discs, and they're like, well, what are we supposed to do with this? So I think coming up with interesting ways of working with a player on a disc versus just giving them a disc and just trying to make your money in the short term will make you more money in the long term.
Yeah, I think, well, the bottom line is the reason the disc lines really exist, it started with Paul, and it was just a means to pay that contract. And because, Hannah, you mentioned, it needing to be a competitive offer, but realistically, it's actually more of a company advantage. The players care about the bottom line at the end of the day. If Gannon Burr is looking at Innova and Discraft, and Innova's offering more, but not a disc line, he doesn't care. The disc lines, sure, they sound good on paper, but really they're just there for the company, because they know it's how they're going to as quickly as possible get as much money towards that player's contract as possible. So that's why you're seeing like MVP do it, because they're picking players that move the needle and trying to give them lines and pay those deals off really quick. And I think that's where the danger is. Like, I don't know, now that that's kind of become a standard procedure, I mean, I don't know if there's ever any way to shut it off, because the consumer mind is certainly switched that way. Whereas in other sports, yeah, you have signature things, but I don't know, disc golf can be unique in that way, because you look at golf, for example, and like nobody's out here getting signature drivers, right? Like, you're not going to see TaylorMade giving a player their own driver. It's
very rare. It's very rare.
Like,
there are some signature.
Phil Mickelson had a wedge at one point.
Jason Daly had a set.
Irons, but typically they're pushing the stock things. But golf clubs are also
super expensive.
They're expensive, but they all do this. Like, a driver is a driver, right? Your driver is gonna hit the way this driver does. Discs all do different things, so you can't just have like all your players marketing one driver. You have to kind of spread things out, and there is also opportunity there. And I think that's where the disc lines come from, because it's like, well, we can keep making discs infinitely and just kind of brand them a different way, and that's just kind of how disc golf has worked.
That's kind of the point I made with like pushing towards the stock stuff, because you gave the golf example, but the only it's not a problem, but I don't know what driver Rory uses, but I can go buy that driver, but it's not the same driver that Rory's using.
No.
He's got a different shaft. He's got maybe a different head, like a different, all the things are different. But as a consumer, especially if you don't know that, you're like, oh, I get to hit what Rory's hitting, totally. And I kind of a like mini rebuttal, I guess. Like, Hannah mentioned like she really thought it was good, kind of what Discmania did with what Simon and Eagle left. But I guess I would argue if you have to do that, if you have to pivot just because someone leaves, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you, like what Brodie said, if Brodie would leave right now, they could still sell Get Freakies. But if you are so heavily invested in a person's image to sell your disc, if they're gone, you have nothing.
I can tell you as a retailer, like what they were doing was dumping that stock, and it was not moving. There was definitely and it goes back to keeping the attention on the players. That is just kind of where the sport's at, because that's just an example of like those players, that audience, they moved on with those players. And even though disc golf does have diehard manufacturer fans, the player connection for certain players in particular is really strong, and it kind of supersedes that.
I think the big thing that disc golf has advantage wise from a manufacturer standpoint that golf doesn't have is because golf is changing year after year, or at least they're claiming that this driver is different, this new driver is different, right? And it is different because there are guys on tour that are hitting drivers from 3 years ago because they're like, this driver is better for me, and that's a big issue because they're trying to act like they're hitting the new stuff, right?
Yeah.
But with disc golf, the thing that disc golf has that golf doesn't have is no one's buying a Bubba Watson pink driver. They don't come out with a money foil driver and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I already have that driver, but I have to get the money foil one, right? That is a huge thing that disc golf has. We're able to change the stamp on the Get Freaky, change the plastic on the Get Freaky, and it's the same exact disc, but every year people are like, let me go get this one. I need to try this one. So that is a massive, massive advantage that disc golf has because of the price point. People are willing to buy an extra disc at $20. And as long as they just market it and continue to go that way, I think it's fine. I think if they continue to go down the route, because some of them have with like flight numbers and stuff, where it's very disingenuous about what a disc actually is, I think that's where some companies eventually will falter because they'll lose the faith of the consumer. Because then they'll feel like, oh, you're just trying to get me to buy this, when in fact it's the same disc that you just sold to us last year. Whereas you're like, hey, this is the same disc, but look, we got glitter in it. Kind of cool.
Yeah. And there is a lot of consumers in disc golf because of that, price point that are like, they know the discs are the same, but they just want to collect at the end of the day. I mean, there are people who collect golf clubs like that too. They're just in a little bit of a different tax bracket.
Yes.
I think one last point, sorry, is if you look at the Simon example, I'm curious dollars and cents what he made more money off of, the time lapse or the Lozado, which was just a hex that had his stamp on it. Curious what it looks like on the back end there, but that disc seemed almost more hyped than the time lapse and for a longer period of time.
Yeah, certainly. It definitely. Now the hex was tied. If you're, I don't know if you're in the MVP note, was the hex tied to him from the start, from the time it released?
I don't believe so, but I don't know.
Because if it was, then it's kind of the same thing. But if it released stock and then they made the axolotl, I mean, that just shows you the power of Simon's audience. But that would be a good example of like, it's a Sexton Firebird too, right? I mean, that's just an old Firebird mold, and yeah, you can definitely move stock with a custom spin on it. But some manufacturers are going that way already too. It's two ways to look at it.
Well, it's also it goes also to just the power of the person that you're marketing, because if the person that you're marketing has a big fan base and can move plastic, then you can take an already disc that exists and put their stamp on it and it will sell. If they can't, that's a lot of times where you have to create a new disc.
Yeah.
So that way people are like, oh, I got to buy this. Is a brand new disc.
Second punch. And here's the key. Right now, finances are tight for a lot of disc golf companies. They want to see ROI. And the easiest way to know if a player is worth it is if their disc sells. Because then it's like, okay, that was money we would not have made if we did not have this player, because it's literally their disc. That's how we marketed it. So I think that's big too, is like, so many companies struggle with how much money are we really making with our logo on this player's back, just passively. Whereas if their name's on a disc and that disc sells, it's very black and white for them.
And we've seen that too with some of the people we've worked with in the past.
Absolutely.
You know, when you on the behind the scenes side, you can be like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. It's some people move the needle and some people don't. That's just where the sport is. All right, moving on. We got a fan submitted topic here. We got another PDGA skeptic here looking for the inside scoop. So this fan said, should disc golf fans and players demand more transparency between the DGPT and the PDGA? Is their relationship truly collaborative, or is there a growing power struggle that affects the future of the sport? So I think they see a lot of announcements that paint these two organizations in cahoots, but is that really the case? And does there need to be a little bit more transparency as to what their relationship details? Ross, what do you think?
So I'm glad I get to go first on this question. So my day job is I'm a business agent for a labor union. So I like negotiate and enforce labor union contracts. The thing when I saw this, the first thing I thought of was, fans, whatever, we are paying customers. But at the end of the day, what buy-in do the players have? I know there is a players council, and as folks know, across all major sports, players are in a labor union and have collective bargaining agreements with their leagues. I hope there is transparency with the players, and that the players know exactly what the tour is doing, what the tour is investing in, and has some sort of advisory, in those decisions. Because at the end of the day, the tour needs to grow for the benefit of the players. So I hope that there's transparency there. I think it seems pretty clear that the PDGA and DGPT are slowly becoming one, but one thing that I'm curious on the back end is there's way more PDGA members and people who participate in PDGA events than there are Disc Golf Pro Tour subscriber or DGN subscribers and people who tune into the Disc Golf Pro Tour. If you show up to a local C or B tier, I'm willing to bet maybe 25-30% of the people playing in that event know what happened in the last Pro Tour event. So I'm assuming the PDGA still has more resources and power in that relationship, but I really do hope that the players have some sort of say, at the table in those conversations about the future of the tour and how the tour can grow in a sustainable way.
Yeah, it's definitely a more recent issue, the idea of player representation and keeping that fair for them. Mike, what do you think of this dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I think players and fans should demand a lot more transparency from the PDGA than currently, but I can think of like 10 things off the top of my head that I care more about than this relationship. The Disc Golf Pro Tour is a private for-profit company, and they don't have any obligation to disclose anything. I mean, they should, like Ross said, they should be working with players, be it an association or something that avoids issues of the past where they decide something without talking to players and fans get mad, and then they look pretty dumb and they change it because of the backlash. But the Disc Golf Pro Tour has every right to be a bit more under the vest on business dealings if they feel that's what's best for their company. I mean, at the end of the day, they have to survive. And I love disc golfers, but if we're being honest as a whole, I don't necessarily trust the average disc golfer more than an established company that shows it can at least survive multiple years to know what's best for disc golf. And making everything public would just slow down progress even more, lead to unneeded pressure to the Disc Golf Pro Tour. I mean, changes like adding a paywall, swallowing the NTs, tour cards, whether you agree with them or not, that may not have happened if there was a reliance on keeping everyone happy. And if that's what they think is best for them, then they have the right to think that. As far as the PDGA goes, I don't really know what we would expect them to tell us if the Pro Tour is bullying them or if it's vice versa. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both just two companies that are going to do what they think is best for whatever they're whoever they want to be best for. So I don't really think transparency is that important in this relationship.
Okay. Brodie, who do you think the PDGA is concerned with it being best for?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their organization compared to some other organizations that are in the similar light, I think they kind of handle themselves completely differently. Which is unfortunate, but a lot of times I'm sure that's how it works with like kind of niche sports or niche organizations like that. I will say this though, because I agree with Mike. Like the DGPT doesn't need to tell us anything. And I can't agree with him more on the fact that, especially on the business side, I almost wouldn't want to listen to anyone that's playing on tour at all. If they want to ask, hey guys, what kind of snacks do you want to have? And you want to have input on that, or like, hey, how many bathrooms do you want? Or do you guys want security in the parking lot? Like, if they want to ask questions like that, completely fine. But as far as like the direction of how the tour should go and stuff, I'm with Mike 100%. That should be the people behind. And let me just give you an example, because I probably have a dozen of these, but we're just going to say hypothetical so I don't get in trouble. In case this is a thing. I'm probably going to go over my time so you can take points off, but this is a good story. So we're just going to throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say all of us are friends and we're going to go to a concert, right? It's a 3-day concert. I show up the first day. You guys are all going to meet me there on the second day. We also are all very animal friendly people. We love animals. So we each have a dog, right? And we travel with our dog and we love our dog. So I take my dog to the concert. I go into the concert. Someone comes up to me and says, hey, listen, we appreciate you being here, but you can't have a dog here. I'm sorry, you can't have a dog here. So what do? I go, okay, I probably say some kind words to them and I walk off. Then I go into our text thread and say, guys, I just got kicked out of the concert because I've had a dog. Let's stick it to them and let's all show up the next day with a dog. These are some of the people that we have spreading stuff on the tour, of where potentially we could get kicked out of tournaments based on their actions. So yes, I don't think we should be listening to everyone just because they're a professional disc golfer.
Sounds like a crazy concert.
It was a great concert.
Okay, Hannah, wrap it up for us. What do you think about the relationship between PDGA and Pro Tour?
Yeah, so demanding transparency, it's yes and no for me. Like, as people in general, we tend to seek out transparency and motives from corporations and companies. It's just human instinct to want to know the whole truth. That being said, ultimately, it can at times benefit companies, kind of like I believe it was Mike and Brodie were saying, to not share everything or share the complete picture. And just because a brand or an organization chooses not to, doesn't mean there's some big conspiracy or they've got something to hide. Sometimes it's just not our business and it doesn't need to be. Do I believe, honestly, that the PDGA and the Pro Tour have 100% a collaborative relationship? No, but I also don't think there's some loosely hidden power struggle either that's just threatening to implode the disc golf world. For $50 a year, I am a PDGA member and a proud DGN Pro subscriber for $140 a year, which is the discounted yearly rate I get as a PDGA member. And I personally don't feel like I need to know everything, but I do believe that if you are going to put something out there to the public, you have to be able to back it up or be willing to offer an explanation. At the end of the day, I do have trust in Jeff Sprains and Doug Bjerkes and their teams, and I believe they're just trying to do the best that they can with what they have. And let's not forget, the DGPT knows that the vast majority of DGN subscribers are also PDGA members, and by partnering with the PDGA on the DGN discounts, they are trying to take advantage of that. And for those casual players who like watching disc golf, the DGPT believes they can help the PDGA out by driving member growth. A direct quote from the DGN knowledge base site is, remember, you don't need to be a PDGA member in order to have a DGN account, but if you want a sweet discount, maybe consider signing up.
There you go. There's your pitch. Join the PDGA. Join the disc golf.
Can I rebuttal?
Sure.
This is Brodie Finances coming in here. Okay?
Yeah.
Brodie Finances coming in here.
Oh boy.
First off, I want to just throw it out there and say, listen, if you have credit card debt and they're charging you 30% interest, your points don't mean squat. It's the first thing I got to say.
Sure.
Second thing, there is this culture too, which I shout out to Hannah. There is this culture though. It's like, hey, buy this. And oh, by the way, you should also buy this, but you get a discount if you buy this and you buy this. So like, to me, I don't get that because it's like, that doesn't make sense unless you wanted it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Like, unless you were already going to buy both, it doesn't make sense. But
I don't think anyone's buying a PDGA membership to then get the discount on the Disc Golf Network. I think it's more of just them trying to get PDGA members to come over. We're on the fence.
I agree with you. I'm just saying there is this idea of like putting stuff on discount or having things out there. It makes people think that it's a great buy and they buy. I don't think that's what's necessarily happening here. This was more just Brodie Finances coming in with the culture of the United States, of how there's a lot of situations out there where you feel like you're getting a deal, so you have to buy it, when in fact you wouldn't have even bought that. You would have saved a lot more money. I'll just throw it out there. Also, the market, everyone calm down. We're going to be fine.
Where's the NASDAQ today?
It doesn't matter. As long as you're not pulling out money in the next couple of years, you're all right.
Hey, you can't lose money until you pull out the money. That's how
not investment advice. No, Trevor, no investment advice.
There you go. Good save. I think that it is
professional investment.
Not professional.
I think it's important to point out that whether we want more transparency from the PDGA or not, they are fulfilling their obligation as a 501c4. They're filling out the form that they have to fill out. They're, so it'd be great if we had more. And if you want to show that by adjusting your pocketbooks accordingly, go ahead. But they're not doing anything wrong technically
that you know of.
Right.
Oh, I have this dream that
I hope we have a Netflix documentary come out in a couple of years.
I don't like, and here's the thing, I like Doug Bierkes. Like he's
like
great.
Doug, yeah.
And I'm sure there are good people at the PDGA. I do know they have a lot of money. I don't know that they're growing the sport of disc golf as much as they should be trying to. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but would I be like the most upset if someday, like I saw a news break and some guy at PDGA is getting taken out in handcuffs? Like,
can I ask a question?
Wait. I'm sorry. Just to jump in, you mentioned, Trevor, about growing the sport. Who has the most at stake when it comes to growing the sport? It is the players. The players. The more people that are watching the Pro Tour, the more people that are super engaged in their local scene are more likely to be customers. Which is why I brought up about player buy-in and player consultation, because truly, I mean, the Pro Tour and the people that are funding the tour obviously want to see it succeed, but truly at the end of the day, the biggest stakeholder is the players.
I think the PDGA has just as much to gain as the players. Every new person that starts playing disc golf is a percentage chance they may become a member. I think everybody has something to gain. I think there's like a supply chain there, but I mean, the manufacturers have something to gain. Certainly they're probably the most direct, because if somebody starts playing disc golf, they have to get disc golf discs.
Buy discs, yeah.
So they're the first one in the lineup, but the manufacturers aren't necessarily like, they're not nonprofits. Like the PDGA, they kind of put on the image of like, we're all for the sport. And like, that's where I want to see. And it's not that they have no initiatives. I don't know. You can see their financials online. There's a lot of money.
Some of their initiatives might just suck.
Maybe they do.
Legitimate question, though. Legitimate question. If I'm like I don't even know what positions there are at the PDGA, but let's just say I'm like a assistant tournament director specialist at the PDGA, making $85,000 a year.
Full benefits.
Do I make $85,000 a year regardless of the number of members?
Well, let me give you a little tip. The PDGA, during the dog day years of disc golf, where everybody thought it was in a huge decline, they were increasing their payroll by like six figures each year.
So if the number of people doesn't matter, right?
Well, no, it does. Active memberships is how they make the majority of their money. So yes, there is a correlation there.
But what I'm saying though is, if there isn't any drive to really grow the game, if I'm still just making money regardless, right?
Yeah, but who's making money? Because as a nonprofit, nonprofits are allowed to make money. They can't not make money.
I'm talking about
owners and stakeholders can't profit from it.
I'm talking about if I have a job,
right,
that I don't feel I'm qualified for, but I somehow got it. Would I want the company to continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger to where they might?
I think the question
that's my only thing about I've always just wondered about that.
It's not whether the employees at PDGA have the incentive to grow the sport. It's whether there are enough employees whose job it is to grow the sport. I think that's where the question lies.
Mike, this is my thing. Mike, this is my thing.
I think I know what you're saying.
I think most people know certain pyramid schemes, right? There's certain pyramid schemes that we know, oh, that's a pyramid scheme. I'm going to stay away from that. But like, do you want to buy some bald pythons? Would you like to buy some? You could sell them, make a lot of money.
No, thank you.
Okay. Have you heard about that one yet?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I can't get you because it's too big. And so my whole thought is like, once something gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's really hard to hide stuff. That's kind of my thought, right? And I'm not saying the PGA is hiding things. My old thing is, if you have a smaller company with less people and you have a really nice paycheck coming in, why risk it by making the company bigger and bigger and bigger to where you have potentially more people asking you questions, more people checking on things, more people saying
competitive organization.
Sure. But I can answer that question. I mean, I feel like I'm not this. I don't know why I'm becoming the face of the PGA right now because
I love it. I love it.
A lot of their stuff, but the people that are making the big decisions are the board of directors who get $0. So the people who they're paying don't have a choice.
They've got a budget for their summits, though. They get nice hotels and breakfast included.
I think they deserve that if they're not getting paid. But I think, like, I get what you're saying, Brodie, but the directors, I mean, unless the directors are hiring their best friends, and sure, and then there's nepotism and all that, but that's every company. So I don't know. I just think that we might be looking for something that
is true.
Is maybe there, but maybe not. And I think that we just have to remember that nonprofits are allowed to make money. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's just, and we can disagree. Like Trevor said, maybe they're not putting their profits in the right places. They might think they are, we might not. But if we think that, then our wallets can talk.
And I think I'd be less concerned with the whole issue if I didn't feel like the PDJ kind of had handcuffs on the Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Well, the PDJ,
that's my whole thing.
Their profits are not the concern because I want them to make as much money as possible. It's their increasing payroll over years where maybe that budget should be going elsewhere. I don't know. That's
or paying marshals to go to have a 7-day trip in 7-day vacation in Lynchburg. I mean, it's just there's certain allocations of funds where if this is what everyone's saying, this is how disc golf's going to get bigger is the PDGA. I don't know, man.
What handcuffs is the PDGA putting on the tour?
I mean, the tour can't do tons of stuff because
they can't have an island without getting a waiver.
Like the way that certain courses can be played.
Do you think that's limiting the growth of the tour? You think that's what's keeping consumers away?
I don't think it's helping. I don't think making courses less exciting, making courses less punishing, making less risk reward shots, making experiences less is helping. Again, disc golf has such a small market share of sports entertainment that it's like you got to be trying to do every single thing you can to try to break in and try to get out there. And I mean, you know, don't make me bring up the freaking driving range. You know, I mean, these are people. Don't make me bring up the driving range, but I mean, these are things that happen. And it's like, instead of them being like, holy crap, our bad, that was really embarrassing, they like double down on the fact of being like, oh, this guy sucks. And it's like, there's just a lot of that. We saw that also with them at Volunteers. The PGA loves to take all the credit when their event is awesome and everyone says it's great. And then when the event sucks, the Volunteers, they didn't do their job, you know? So there's a lot of things that also the rating. Hannah, are you happy that, you know, 5% of the money that you're paying the PGA is going so you have a little number next to your name?
She might be.
She actually might be. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, given that
ratings are good for AMs. So
for that price?
No.
Mike?
Again, I'm not the face of the PGA, but
you're PGA, Mike.
I think the next question is a good segue because I think what it comes down to is there's not enough overlap in good business minds in disc golf, and I think that's the problem.
Silas, please edit his name to PDJ Mike, please. Thank you.
PDJ Mike, yeah. Silas isn't here.
I was a state coordinator, but that was a few years ago.
Do it with telekinesis. All right, yeah, let's talk about a different disc golf touring entity here. So the Go Throw Tour had its inaugural event. The Cancer Playbook opened this past weekend. It seems they might be struggling with some of the extra elements of the tour, mainly their website. It's an absolute mess. There's two of them, in fact. They're both messes. But also some marketing and logistical hiccups, such as making their rounds on YouTube for members only for the first few hours and not really telling anybody. However, initial coverage is performed well on YouTube. So what I want to know is, should this hopeful tour just be focusing on a good YouTube product and abandon the notion of point standings, ticket packages, etc.? Or do you think pushing forward as a Disc Golf Pro Tour similar product will gain them more traction? So it's really just a question of, should this just be a YouTube channel, or are they on the right track trying to be more like a tour and really get into that lane? Mike, what do you think?
No, I'm going to be pretty hard on Go Throw here. So I like everyone there. I like what they're trying to do in theory. I don't know if they know what their goals are, and just how it's gone down has just been really disappointing. So back all the way up, the announcement of it came in December, which felt kind of rushed and last minute, but I was hopeful like maybe this is a strategic move to pique interest right at the right time. Clearly that wasn't the case, because the link they sent us to, the website was basically unusable. It's better now. It's still really bad. The schedule wasn't set. It changed multiple times. It still might change again. First, some of the events were sanctioned. Now none. Now some of them again. There was no unified front of information. Their Instagram was leading to multiple websites. Some of them they didn't own. It just looked like they threw it together on a weekend with the boys, and they thought this would be a great idea. I think this is the classic disc golfers who really know disc golf just don't know business. In business, there's a term MVP, which is minimal viable product. And what it is I've calculated, what do we give, the minimum we can give that'll satisfy the customer and give us momentum to be able to make changes in the future. And I don't know what they did. It wasn't that. They kind of did a bunch of stuff, but they did none of it well. And, just starting with YouTube and having some really good coverage and high payouts and doing coverage on events that aren't covered by the Pro Tour, I think would have been a smarter strategy. But I don't think there was any strategy. I mean, someone with no business knowledge would know, hey, let's not send someone somewhere where they can't use something. And I don't know if you guys didn't see it, there's ways to go back and look at a website on a certain date. I encourage you to go do that. It looked like a middle schooler put it together. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the reality of it. And so I think it'd be great if they push the tour to be more innovative and have some competition, but it doesn't, to me, feel like they're capable of doing that.
Okay. All right, Brodie. So do you think that there's any reason to go that tour route, or do you kind of agree with Mike?
Here's the thing. PJ Mike had me falling away from him, but now he's reeling me back in. I actually am going to see if you want to come on Tour Life tonight, because we have Luke Humphreys coming on, and I would love for you. Seriously, I would love. There's an honest invite. If you're watching this now, Mike actually might be on Tour Life. You can go back and watch. If you want to come on and ask some of these questions, because I've kind of seen like a broader scale of it, so I don't have as much insight as you do on some of the things that I've never clicked on a link. I did like a long time ago. So there's maybe some questions that I would love for you to ask Luke to see what his answers are, because on some of the things I am with you. Like when they initially announced this, I was thinking, okay, they're going to go like a different route. They're going to do something different than the Disc Golf Pro Tour to get people's attention. And I thought there was like a decent shot of like that working, bringing the skin side of it, having maybe doubles, I don't know, doing something that's different. But the more I hear from people, because again, I didn't watch this at all, I saw clips and whatnot, but the more I hear from people, it looks like it's just what people are calling the Silver Series. Like the Silver Series doesn't exist, and now Go Throw just showed up and kind of turned into that. So I'm with you on the fact. I mean, they have point system to get you to the Tour Championship. I mean, it just seems like a Disc Golf Pro Tour 2.0. And my whole thing with companies, I don't want to talk about Southwest right now, but if you're not going to diversify yourself from other companies, you got to do it better. You can't just show up and be a worse product. And that's what I'm hearing from some people.
Yeah. Okay, Hannah. So do you think it's just a copy paste and not as good, or is there some hope for the future?
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this because I love what Luke Humphreys and his crew have done in the past, and I love the idea of having more disc golf to watch. But I agree with a lot of Mike and Brodie's points about it was just a little bit sloppy and confusing, kind of coming together. I think if they were trying to do events on the same weekends as the Pro Tour, then all of these secondary elements would really matter and have a huge impact. But by choosing to have their events on off weeks, they're kind of a small fish in an empty pond. And the people looking for fish in that empty pond are like the Jomas Pro audience and the DGN subscribers like myself who have nothing to watch that week. So we're going to watch the product. But I think in that instance, then they should focus more on the YouTube side of things, which is what they've been so good at in the past, and let that build their notoriety and market itself for them. Their website and everything that I've been hearing, and even some of the things we saw like on YouTube where it was like public, but you had to be a member for a minute, but then you didn't. It was just a really confusing. And as somebody who wanted to watch more disc golf this weekend, that was a little bit disappointing. I think the part of the issue too is like their first round front nine got over 100,000 views already, but the back nine of the final round, as of earlier today, was only at 40,000 views. Now that drop off could even out in the next few days, but it also could be because maybe the audience didn't want to watch disc golfers play in those conditions, especially when you didn't have that many top names there. Either way, if they build a consistent product with top players, the views should be there in theory, and with seemingly limited resources that they do have, they need to focus on what they're good at. And will they make enough money from that to make the effort worth it? Only time will tell.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's going to be a matter of time, and maybe not a ton of time. Ross, how much time do you think they have in this current model?
If I was to go back in the Wayback Machine, or I want to take us back in the Wayback Machine to 3 years ago, maybe it was 2, where you would log into UDisc, and the first thing you see is put in your Grip 6 picks for the next upcoming Pro Tour event. Them doing that exposed so many people to the Disc Golf Pro Tour. More people use UDisc than our PDGA members, and there's less DGN subscribers than there are PDGA members. UDisc is right there for all of us. It is the place. They call it the app for disc golfers because that's what it truly is. Someone who shows up to Wednesday doubles has UDisc and maybe has never even heard of Gannon Burr. And I know that for a fact because I run some Wednesdays doubles and people don't even know what's going on the tour. If I was advising the Go Throw Tour, I would give 50% equity in the tour to UDisc and make UDisc a full partner. If you lived within 150 miles of where this event was, there's no reason why when you open your phone to UDisc, the first thing that pops up is, hey, this event's happening in your area. Do you want to come out and see Gannon, Isaac, and other folks? It's right there for us. UDisc is there to be taken advantage of and to be used to grow the sport, to grow whatever tour, whether it's the Pro Tour or this Go Throw. They should outsource, maybe things that they're not good at, which is the back end website stuff, and focus on what they're good at, which is creating videos and the content for folks, and let UDisc handle the coding stuff. That's what they're really good at.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think that's a great idea. I think that's kind of low-hanging fruit because the one beef that everybody kind of had with the Pro Tour last year was that they abandoned UDisc. And so hopping right back onto there as a competitive tour product, whether they view themselves as that or not, that would have been a great system. And, the funny thing was, one of the dumbest things they did was they were using UDisc, not UDisc Live, but UDisc, like their event scoring as the kind of like mock live scoring for this event. And all you had to do with their website was just give people a link to those scores. And yet they try to make their own leaderboard on the site. And it was like broken. I agree. I think kind of latching on to UDisc would have been a brilliant move on their part.
Why didn't UDisc Live happen?
Because UDisc Live is like a different kind of software.
And you have to pay money probably to have to.
They don't run UDisc Live anymore. Like it doesn't exist.
Oh,
because it was UDisc Live was only for like the touring events.
I think the interesting thing that we're gonna see with Go Throw is like the thing that would have set them apart. If you want to keep everything the same, the thing that would have set them apart could have been just like the distribution. So they could have said, "Hey, we're gonna go live on YouTube for free." Mm-hmm. Right. And that would have set them apart. You can watch live disc golf for free on YouTube, but then they're not going to really make that much money. So you'd have to have sponsorships to do that. But in order to get pros to actually show up to your events, you need to add money.
Right.
But if you're not making money and you don't have sponsorships, like that's such a hard weave to like figure out how that works.
Yeah.
And the more I'm hearing you guys talk about it, it really seems like some of the stuff maybe was not talked about. And they're like, let's just run it and see what happens.
For sure. Yeah. That is a tricky thing is like, yeah, the whole basis of their model is like, we're going to have this, these purses to get the pros there. But in order to do that, okay, now we do have to like act like we're a tour in the sense that we're selling tickets. And okay, if we're going to present ourselves as a tour in that way, we might as well have our own point standings and try to like, I think it's just kind of a slippery slope that led them to where they are.
Go down
because,
the same stand, yeah.
You can be an awesome YouTube product, but you're an awesome YouTube product because you got the pros there in the first place. And they had something going with the skins, but trying to expand it this way, I don't know if it'll be sustainable because you can't necessarily just focus on the YouTube if you've got to pay the players.
I know the weather was bad. Did anyone like watch most of the coverage?
I saw some of it.
Did anyone see, again, the weather was bad, people were slipping, but did you guys notice like a lot more aggressive play than normal? Or was it pretty much like, are people throwing ridiculous shots that you're like, oh my God?
I mean, there were ridiculous shots thrown because
of the weather
all over the place. Yeah. It was tough to tell.
I just want one of the clips I saw, like, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Perkins and who was doing commentating? Was it Perkins and Paul?
Luke and Paul.
It was Luke and Paul.
It was Luke and Paul. Perkins. Sorry, Luke and Paul.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said it, but someone was like, "Oh, and these tournaments aren't going to be sanctioned, so watch these pros be a lot more aggressive." And I'm like, I don't think that's
it could be the case in the sense that the players, like, if you look at the final leaderboard, there's only like 8 players under par, and Gannon won at 11 under. So if you're not fighting for cash, yeah, I bet they were throwing some crazy shots because now they don't even care about their rating. The last thing the last line of defense they have to care about is their rating beyond cash. So yeah, you may have seen some absurd things.
I might have to go back. I might have to say ratings might actually be good.
Keep people invested.
Well, if players are just not even if there's no ratings on the line and players are just going to play like trash.
I can't confirm this because I literally saw it in a comment, but I think someone mentioned that the final round, like each round or maybe just the final round, if you shot hot round, you got points towards the standings. You did. So that does incentivize you to keep trying.
If you get an eagle,
behind.
I think it's like if you get an eagle too, you get points. An ace, you also get some points.
Wild.
If you share it on social media, you get points.
Like and subscribe for points. It is.
Can't tell if you're kidding or not.
No, I'm being serious.
No.
Yes. What? Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes, if you share content from the tour, you get points.
So I get some points on tour.
No way.
Share stuff?
I'm yes.
How did I miss that?
I did a little bit of research.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't talk about that on Grip Log. That's crazy. So they're just doing all kinds of things.
I mean, yeah, why not?
It's the Globetrotters. All right. Well. Okay, on to our final topic. That is something. All right, Mike, Ross, you were in the finals. The screen isn't going to change. No Silas, so everybody can spectate. This is a fun one. So this is one that was submitted by a fan. We talked about it very briefly on Grip Blocked, and immediately I was like, "Ooh, that sounds like a fun debate night question." So here is the question. Remember, you will have 2 minutes. It will just not be live. If Simon Lizotte had gone to Discraft instead of Paul back in 2018, would Discraft still be at the level of success they've reached today? What factors would have changed the course of history for better or for worse? Mike, would you like to go first or second?
Ask Ross a question.
What's that?
Ask Ross a question.
You can ask Ross a question.
Ross, when did you start playing disc golf?
First UDisc round is July 2019.
Okay. I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
So I think that this is a great and creative question. I also don't think it's that good of a question. I think both can be true. I would bet money whoever asked this was someone who has come into disc golf since the COVID boom, or more recently even than that. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they just assume, and I'm going to assume they don't know the stronghold Paul had on the disc golf world at the time. I mean, both players obviously were extremely popular, but in my opinion, it wouldn't be even close to the same result. The popularity is closer now. And if you wanted to fight me and say Simon's more popular, I wouldn't fight you. You might be right. But 7 years ago, it really wasn't close at all. Paul was at his peak. And the move to Discraft was shattering. I mean, if that would have happened, all things the same more recently, it would have blown any announcement out of the water that we've ever seen. And it probably still did. And Simon at the time had less than like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. He was still extremely popular. He hadn't quite hacked the YouTube code yet. And, and again, he was an exciting, very, very popular player, probably top 3, top 5 popular player. But at the time, I don't think Discraft really would have benefited that much from a personality hire of Simon. And that's what he is. He's a personality hire. He moves a lot of plastic, but he doesn't really change the view or the image or, what you think about when you see a company. And Paul did that. So when Paul moved and he played just as well and he kept winning, it put Discraft in this criteria of just as good as Innova or maybe even better than Innova. Because if you remember, Paul had kind of gone on a dry streak of, I think, 3 years with Innova not winning a title, and then goes ahead and wins the first year on Discraft. So by moving during his peak, he immediately changed the brand overnight. And I think suggesting Simon would have done something similar to that, you'd be suggesting that Discraft was kind of destined for an upward trend. And that's just not the case. Like, Paul accelerated that. Not only did he accelerated it, he started it. So again, I think this question just kind of stems from like either not knowing or not remembering just how far apart they were back then.
Okay, so Mike very, very handily on the side of no, would not have changed as much with Simon. Ross, are you completely agreeing with that, or do you feel like it maybe is closer than it seems?
I will say calling Simon a personality hire is a choice. Yeah, so I'm glad you asked when I started playing because it wasn't going to be part of my answer. So the first tournament I watched as it was happening was 2019 USDGC. Why James Conrad's my favorite player. And if you remember 2019 USDGC, hole 12, Paul Macbeth first round, crazy. I remember Big Germ and Nate being like, "How is this happening?" I think he took like a 10 on the hole. And I was like, who is this Paul guy? Why are they so shocked that he's blowing up on this hole? And started watching other Jomez coverage in Central Coast from 2019. It's this Paul guy is in every single lead card in the final round. His 2019 year, I feel like, is often overlooked by his 2015 year and some other years. The man won 2 majors and 7 pro tours and national tours and podiumed in 3 others. Basically every single tournament besides USDGC, he was the player to beat. And it's not like we're talking about the ancient past of 2015 where, you can make an argument about the level of competition. And because of that, and I really do think because of that, when the COVID pause happened in society and people were spending more time at home, if you just got into disc golf and you're watching all the Jomez's and all the coverage from the previous year, you're just being bombarded with Paul. It's Paul, Paul, Paul. So even if you had just gotten into disc golf then and were kind of going back in time, you were just inundated with Paul. I think also another factor to take into consideration is the front 9 of the 2019 Worlds is the most watched disc golf content ever. I'm pretty sure it has like at this point close to 5 million, maybe 4 million views on YouTube, where it's just Paul shredding Lake Eureka. So anyone who was getting into disc golf then when the customer base was growing, you really had no choice but to at least respect Paul, even if you weren't there to watch it, firsthand.
Yeah, I think my stance on it was kind of Simon is the best when it comes to capturing the disc golfers already in the sport. I think Paul was the best option as far as capturing people that were just entering the sport because he put a professional face on disc golf. And that was relatable for new people who were coming from golf and whatever other sports they played during COVID. They could look and be like, okay, that guy looks like, he plays a serious sport and is an athlete. It was definitely the right timing. And then, like you mentioned, Ross, like, yeah, anything you looked up on YouTube for, I mean, disc golf content has evolved so much since those COVID years. Before then, it was mostly coverage, and so that is what you were going to find was just a lot of him winning tournaments. So I think I would agree with that. I think if you were to, I don't know, how far up would you have to move that timeline? Do you think? I think maybe that's the next question. If things had paused where they were, how many years up would you have to bump the timeline for Simon to overtake Paul in that category? Because right now, I can tell you for free that Simon moves a lot more plastic.
I mean, I think if you were to say this move happened the same time he moved to MVP, I mean, that's when he started. His YouTube really came into its own. He started winning on tour. I think he's up to, what's he now, like 8-9 Pro Tour wins. So he's not only just this, fun personality to watch in videos, but it's this guy can shred and beat the best of them. So I think probably, and let's be honest, Paul, unless you're a Paul stan, has probably lost his luster a little with a lot of fans because, he feels like to a lot of newer players, someone who was elite in the past and maybe now is just very good, even though he did just win a Worlds a few years ago. But I think people kind of disrespect Paul a little in terms of his talent. I'm rooting for a Paul comeback year this year.
We shall see. In any case, Mike, you are a winner today. Congratulations. Remember, guys, you can vote on Instagram. The poll will be there. If you disagree, you can vote against Mike. But I think he had a pretty good show, even though he didn't have his plant to support him this time.
Yeah, I want to take my winner's lap. I want to talk about all the things I like about the just kidding.
Yeah, you're PDGA Mike now.
So yeah, go ahead. In the future, you can put PDGA Mike if you want. No, thanks for having me. We were talking before the show that these were really unique questions and not a ton of stat-based ones. So it's nice to have a switch up and have to get a little bit more creative in the answers. So it was a lot of fun.
For sure. Everybody flex the creative muscles tonight. Next week, we'll be talking probably about Waco, hopefully an exciting event. I just figured out realized today that they're only playing at Brazos East this year because they switched it from a plus. So that'll be fun. 3 rounds of the Beast is always a good time. We'll see if we get an interesting winner or any interesting storylines out of that, but we'll be here next week and we'll see you then.